G'day, welcome. I have not had one skerrick, one little wink of sleep. But actually, that is the reason why. I guess I'm going to talk about Nicola Bulley's case now, because I was looking a little bit into it this morning, because I saw that Peter Hyatt had made a show about a case that wasn't on my radar, but it's a very curious situation, and I thought it looked really interesting. So I've had a really basic look, and I thought I'll just get on and talk through the facts of the case and go from there, because already I can see in comment sections, right, all of the usual, suspects of a particular type of comment, a particular type of repeated bit of information, or this sort of very firm expression of a belief about a particular aspect that might relate to Nicola Bulley's case, but actually something that I know is not true, is just a supposition, is just a misapprehension, is something, it's something that someone with actually nothing like experience, but they're talking about it. So I thought, well, yeah, this sounds like something I want to discuss. So this is a very strange time for me to be going live, I guess. Why do I do these live? Well, I mean, it's probably a good idea just to record a video. The quality of the picture's better too. And, I can pause, I can do my little editing trick where I can just sort of pause, gather my thoughts again, and then press record again. But then, I've got to go through this whole rigmarole of waiting for the video to upload, and sometimes that's just really frustrating. Whereas when someone that has the capacity to go live on their channel, when you go live, when you're finished, it's up, the video's up, it's live already, so there's no uploading time after you've made the recording. Anywho, so what is this case that I want to talk about? And why is it interesting me? It's interesting me because there's a couple of things about it that I feel that I can discuss, feeling quite confident about some of those things. Hello, someone checked in and then buggered off again. Okay, so Nicola Bulley, her whole situation is completely mysterious, because this really is so far anyway, gone without a trace scenario. Nicola Bulley is 45. She's 5'3", blonde-haired, petite build, very attractive woman with this wide smile, just this open face, beautiful blue eyes. She's a professional woman. She's a mortgage broker who is working from home, and she has a partner. Her partner is Paul Ansell. He's a year younger at 44. They share 2 daughters. I think the daughters are quite young. Paul and Nicole have been together for, am I too close to the screen? Paul and Nicole have been together for 12 years. And Paul also works from home in Inskip. So this is a case from England, from a county called Lancashire, and that's on the west coast and the inland from, a couple of quite famous places, from Blackpool. Liverpool is south of Blackpool, and where Nicole went missing from, this is on the River Wyre, and it runs out to the coast north of Blackpool, and she went missing from some fields in England. In the countryside, there's a lot of places that are just open for people to take their dogs. You can go roaming off leash, and it's about, from what I can gather, following the river about 15 miles upriver. Nicole went missing on January the 27th, and she followed her usual routine from all accounts. She left her husband at home in Inskip and drove north, I believe, to drop her daughters off to their primary school. She, again, following normal routine, something she's done thousands of times, she took her family dog Willow, a brown Springer Spaniel, nearby to these open fields that wrap beside the River Wyre. In the center of these fields there is a caravan park, and there's just a series of gates that you go through as you follow the path around the bank of the river, and all the open fields are there for the dogs to enjoy, for people to roam. There'll be wildlife there. The River Wyre is a tidal river. As I said, it's only 15 miles or so upriver to where Nicole went missing. The thing about tidal rivers, and again, I see this is another thing in the comment sections, it just seems like there's a lot of people that are making these pronouncements and assumptions based on absolutely no experience of living near a tidal river, even probably owning a bloody dog, walking in fields, falling into rivers, whatever it is. They seem to have no experience of anything, and yet they're making quite a lot of assumptions. Oh, look at that little river. Oh, she could have just flailed around, screamed out, called out, gotten out. Her dog would have jumped in. Oh, it would have been easy peasy. Anyway, I'm kind of skipping ahead. So it's a tidal river, and these tidal rivers can sometimes look fairly glassy and benign on the surface, but in actual fact, underneath there's quite the undertow, and especially at the changing of any tide. And this is particularly treacherous when the tide turns and is going out to sea. And you might think that it's pretty easy to swim across to a bank or just float and you'll be all right. But you've got to consider a lot of things. And number one, Nicola Bulley, her name actually, hi, Crime Curious. Okay, yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for being here. I just wanted to talk through the little bit that I know about this case and some of the points. And that's great. Thanks for letting me know you're there. So I'm happy to have you, and that's good because then I don't get distracted by seeing the chat scroll. So yeah, talk about Nicola Bulley. She's gone missing from Lancashire in England, and this is on the west coast. She's I don't want to say middle-aged mum, but she's not a young mum, but she's a career woman. She's 45. She has a partner of 12 years. She's got 2 young girls, and she dropped them off at school. She's walking along the river, and a river which is tidal, deceptively calm. It's not a river with river beaches. It's a river with banks, steep banks, drop-offs. It's icy cold at this time of year, and Nicole was wearing layers and layers of clothes, tight black denim jeans, big wool green socks, Wellington boots. These are the rubber boots that are used for wet weather walking. They're the boots that I used to walk around the countryside with Rocky when I was living in a place called, well, I won't say, but yeah, and down on the mid-coast. And she had other layers with, I think, maybe a jumper with a ankle-length coat and an ankle-length gilet. So, you know, basically a long vest. And these would have been warm weather items. Not sure, did they say a hat, but she's pictured wearing a lot of hats. Apparently she was wearing a light blue Fitbit, but there is questions about, did she disconnect the data of Fitbit the prior Tuesday? And can you imagine, there's something called, what is it? Is it, you know, you plunge into icy water and your breath goes, your heart stops. That's called hydrocution, I think is the technical term. But imagine if she did end up in the River Wyre, a winding river, tidal, undertow, icy cold, and deep. She was near the deepest part of that particular stretch of river, where it would be maybe only this deep at the river edge, but quickly dropping to 8 feet and 15 feet. And she's in all these heavy clothes. She gets that shock of cold water. It takes your breath away. Did you know it's 20 to 60 seconds before you can be under? And I will tell you this, and I know this from personal and still traumatic experience. Drowning is silent. So there's a lot of commentary, you know, from people I'm seeing in comment sections of the few videos I've quickly watched. Oh, she'd be flailing around. Even one expert on the search team says, I don't understand it. She would have been making a big noise. No, you don't, because she wasn't just in there and struggling for a bit in some pretty easy conditions. She was in some extraordinarily difficult positions. Excuse me, I shouldn't be distracted by my tires. Extraordinarily difficult conditions. It's winter in the northern hemisphere. The River Wyre is icy cold. She's rugged up. She'll get the shock and then that instant weight. Boots filling with water, down coats and woolly things, and denim jeans, tight denim jeans, everything designed to keep her under. And drowning is silent. This is just the mechanisms of the body, and all you can do when you do manage to bob yourself up is a puff of air, and there's a glassiness to the eyes, and that blue tinge comes very quickly. There's possibly even foam, and it's deathly quiet, and it's terrifying to see. Okay, and try being in the ocean, trying to save 5 people, and diving down and pulling people up and diving down and trying to get the next person, and trying to swim holding one and then another and dropping them. And fuckwit lifeguards whom you've tried to alert in the meantime, who weren't even watching. You've seen what was going to happen. This was with some Korean tourists at a beach called Kira Beach down in northern New South Wales, this very famous surf beach. And these people, I knew they weren't experienced. I was looking to see, are these lifeies going to be watching? They're just sitting on their chairs, chatting to each other. They weren't parading, they weren't blowing whistles, they weren't warning, doing a good job. And these 5 people suddenly are sucked out, and I'm trying to yell, run back in, yell to them, go back out through the surf, not knowing what to do. And then finally they come out, and then the horror and shock on this young surf lifeguard's face. He was probably very fresh to his role. A lot of them, they do it because they want to go in all the carnivals and everything, right? And surf lifesaving gets a lot of funding, and when they're not even doing their job, right, on these patrolled beaches where they've set themselves up to be there as the safety mechanism between certain hours, it was so traumatic on so many levels, and trying to drag these people up. All their lives were saved, but that could have been 5 lives gone. And it was, anyway, this is such a big digression, but I'm just saying there was not a peep out of any one of them, okay, because it's too late. They're pulled off the ledge into the ocean, into the wrap, and there's nothing. Okay, so all right, so sorry, I'll try and just get on with it. So Nicole, she's in this gear, she's got her dog Willow, she's dropped the kids off, she's walking through these fields. People are talking about the bench where the dog harness, the dog lead, and her phone were found. They think maybe did she just take the leash off there? I think she already would have been holding this in her hand, and the dog was already off leash. The timeline is kind of, she'd texted, she'd been seen by a lady, Christine, who walks her dog there regularly, and who kind of maybe knew her by sight. She was sighted at 8:48 in the fields. At 8:53, she sent an email to her boss. At 8:57, she texted a friend. I'm the voice in Crime Curious' head. She texted her friend to set up a play date for one of her daughters, and maybe about a mortgage that she'd also brokered for the friend. And then she joins a conference call with the business that she works for, I think, with colleagues anyway. It was found it was muted and the camera was off, but the call hadn't been disconnected. And there's this missing window of about 10 minutes. No one knows actually what happened in this 10 minutes. So the phone is found on a bench quite near the riverbank, 100 feet or so away from the edge of this caravan park. And from what I understand, there's a few laneways that cut in from various aspects. It leads on to the A5, A6 motorways. And there's a lane, I can't remember the name, starting with G. That is one access point to the highways, or the motorways as they say, or England, where there's actually not CCTV footage, so this is really unfortunate. There's actually pretty good CCTV footage around the place, but there is an exit point nearby to the roadway where there isn't. And the most believable accounts seem to be that Willow the dog was seen going between the fence at that gate and down to the bench. Maybe they usually walked up and exited out of that gate. Maybe Nicole was abducted and taken through that gate, but the most believable accounts seem to say that Willow was actually in the vicinity of the bench, the seat, where the harness and lead were, and the phone was found. There's stories, Willow was found running down the road. Yes, she was clearly trying to chase an abductor's car. I mean, I think that's just hysteria, and people just telling porkies they want to, the fields, that area, it's called St. Michael's. Okay, it's called St. Michael's on Wyre. Now, it's said that the police don't believe that she left the area, that there's actually no, evidence that she's left the area, but they seem to be a little less sure of themselves in most recent stories about Nicole being drowned or being, having entered the river in some manner. But for a long while, that's definitely what they were telling Paul Ansell, Nicole's partner. And they seemed pretty sure of it. And so far, there's been a really big search of the river. And there is a special group on its way to look at the river with helicopter and with sonar, and they'll be working through the night. That's a group, Specialist Group International. And so, as I said, they're going to be flying over the river all the way down to the river mouth at Morecambe Bay, and they're going to be, or Morecambe, I'm not sure, and they're going to be using sonar equipment just to try and locate her body. It's possible that she's swept out to sea, because it's been a couple of weeks now at least since she disappeared on 27th of January, or she could be held underwater by submerged logs if she's gone into the water. I mean, that does seem fairly likely, but it's only one possibility. And I hope that police are just going to look at everything. Victimology-wise, Nicole wasn't taking as many precautions as she could, I guess, to be a woman safe. I mean, probably because she has no reason, possibly had absolutely no reason just to be going about her life. There is always the spectre of a stalker or someone obsessed with her, and with the victimology, she was a creature of routine, it seems. She would commonly, after dropping the girls off, take Willow down to this St. Michael's Fields, and she would sometimes post this on social media, talking about, it's a beautiful morning. I mean, it's foggy and it's cold, but it's woken me and Willow up, and she's had a great time, and now I'm ready for my day. But from what I understand, and I can only say this, but I can't say it to be true. There's talk that she hasn't posted on social media for a number of weeks, since December, and that could be there could be a reason for that, not wanting someone to know more personal things about her, or just maybe she doesn't have time. But she apparently used to regularly post things about being at this beautiful place with her dog, and things about her children. and there's talk that she hasn't posted for a number of weeks. I haven't seen that though. It's just like the gossip about her Fitbit being disconnected the Tuesday prior, because maybe people are trying to talk about a Gone Girl scenario. That could be the case too. But she's there with her dog, yes, but the dog, she knows she's probably not worried about so much. She's not really paying attention because she is utilizing her walk to work. She's sending emails, she's sending texts, she's on conference calls, and she was wearing earbuds. When you're wearing earbuds, you are shutting yourself off from your surroundings, and I highly recommend anybody, not just women and young women, but just anyone, just be a bit more aware of your surroundings and don't do that, or at least take one of the earphones out. Maybe use earphones and just wear one, and always be listening. Always be aware of your surrounding, what's up ahead, what's behind you. What are the dangers? It just makes sense in this day and age, doesn't it? She, by all accounts, there's actually an app. It might be an app. I've never heard of it, but it's called Strava account. And this showed that frequently she would be at the fields for around 30 minutes. And 20 of the minutes from this morning, 27th of January, are accounted for. This was a regular routine. So, this does not bode well if there was someone wanting to snatch her, right? So what else shall we talk about? Next, let's just talk about... this is something weird, right? When you think about Abby and Libby's case in Delphi, this is also involving, water. Clothing was found, shoes or a shoe, items of clothing, and so far nothing has been found of Nicole's or Nikki's. So police are requesting that, excuse my voice, I've been up all night. Police, of course, let me drink some water. Requesting that locals look out for her clothing. Could be anywhere, but along the riverbanks especially, I guess. Or just looking out for sighting someone in those items of clothing. Maybe people can check all their Ring doorbell cameras or whatever, and their businesses can check, and places along the highway can look out for her. If this is planned, this is something that someone really sick in the head would plan, or someone very greedy. There is is it Cherie? She's doing jail time now. Another pretty youngish blonde woman who staged an abduction. That is really sick. Nikki has these two daughters. She just bought tickets the day before to go and watch them perform gymnastics. It just boggles the mind if, when people can carry out this sort of shenanigans and they have children, and she's got such a loving family. Seeing her parents and her sister Louise Cunningham, it's very... You can sense just how real it is that they are what they say they are. I don't know, I can sense it. I just feel like, yes, they are a very close-knit family, and they are in shock. They have just been put into a parallel universe, right? And her partner, Ellen. Of course, comment sections, etc., full. Next we'll have the the deranged witch of the south will be doing her number on Alan's, pointing out, you know, how he's paragraphs, that is, if they could write them using paragraphs, you know, people that are experts now because they watch the behaviour panel, analysing all, you know, the movements and the things he's saying. But, you know, this is a guy that is clinging to hope for the sake of his children. He can't crumble one little iota, because all his walls will come down. He will disintegrate. And he's got 2 young children. He has to keep hope, right? But, you know, the Gone Girl scenario, while she'd certainly know, I mean, why go there at all? But maybe because, hey, yeah, she knows what a mystery. Leave the items by the river. No CCTV up near the A5 gate on a particular laneway. I mean, who knows? The scarier thing, I mean, is probably that caravan park and a person that might have, hey, sensei wackadoodle. The caravan park, and apparently Nicole keeps a caravan there, I don't know. But the phone is very strange. It wasn't dropped on the grass. It wasn't dropped down the riverbank. It wasn't, you know, from all accounts, the screen isn't cracked or something like that. It was just sitting on the bench as if she'd just been sitting there and then has just disappeared. So it's kind of like, it's like something happened very suddenly, like something shocking or something that demanded this instant attention from her, right? Like some sort of diversion that made her take some quick action, or, you know, someone that took quick action against her. I've thought, you know, did she see something? If it is to do with the river, did she see something going down the river? Did she see an animal floating down the river, maybe a sheep or something, you know, that she suddenly jumped up, or, you know, she jumped up to look at something. Hi, blind squirrel, and hi, Dr. Drink a Lot. Hey, you guys. So, blind squirrel, yes. So, a caravan park, when we talk about caravans, we're talking, that's kind of specific to a small mobile home that would be towed behind another motor vehicle. And I'm not sure what sort of caravan park this is, whether there were permanent units that were bedded down and people lived in permanently. I'm not sure, because these holiday type parks and things, they often have variations of the types of vehicles that are there and the stays that are there. Sometimes people retire to these caravan parks, so it's kind of like trailer or mobile home. When you think of caravan, maybe that word has come from the gypsy caravan, you know, where you think of something a little bit more Romany, a little bit more interesting and, you know, exotic. But, you know, caravan, I think, and I guess travellers are really, you know, that is, that's a culture, kind of a tribe that exists very strongly to this day in the UK and Europe. But yeah, I think it was just some sort of lovely place where people could stay. As I said at the start of the video, of the live, where Nicole went missing from, it's inland from a lot of holiday places. Really a famous one is Blackpool. Okay, so Blackpool, it's like, you know, the beachside, down sort of southwestern England, where, you know, they go for their holidays, you know, and it does attract overseas tourists, but it's a place where a lot of people, say from London, might go and holiday and they go to the seaside where there's boardwalks with, there's fairgrounds and things like that. And I think it's pretty rocky, actually. It's not like Surfers Paradise or anything on the Gold Coast of Australia, but it's a seaside town. It features in a lot of British dramas and movies and things like that. And where she's gone missing from, it's inland just a few k's, and often in beachside places there are campgrounds where people can go and stay a lot more cheaply than going and staying at resorts and hotels and places that are near the coast. So maybe that's why the caravan park is where it is, a few miles inland, lots of greenery, fields. Maybe people take their little boats up and down the river, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's still quite tidal where she's gone missing. So the fear is that if she's gone in, her body could even be out to sea. She would have drowned very quickly. And hey, Yeoman. And there might not, there are people out there walking their dog, but there might not have been anyone sort of in the nearby vicinity when she went in. They would have had to have seen her to go in, because it's not sort of a slope where you'd expect if she did go in, there might be skid marks and places where she's grabbed at the grass and footprints and divots and things like that. It's kind of more like this drop off where if you accidentally toppled in, you'd just be gone. There wouldn't be a trace. And also, from what I can gather, from one newspaper article I read there, it had been raining recently, and so it was extra treacherous. Yeah, so Sensei says it's not that tidal where she is. The river isn't as high as they've been recently. They don't think she would have been pushed out to sea. Okay, yeah. And I guess it depends at the time what direction the tide was going, but from what I understood of comments divers had made, it was possible that the undertow is really strong, that it's up to 8 feet deep, even though there's parts of the river that it's 15 feet deep nearby where she went missing. And they seem to think that the direction at the time of the morning was going out to sea. But yeah, it's quite windy. You go out past through a few little townships, there's bridges and things. You'd think surely she'd be seen, but she could be snagged anywhere along the riverbanks. It's not densely populated along the riverbanks in between the little towns. So it could be pot luck that someone would find her, someone maybe searching on a boat or just, walking in their own fields. Hopefully this helicopter with their sonar equipment and everything, and the sonar equipment can find her if she's there. And the owner of that, or the director of that business, seemed quite positive that if she's there, they should be able to find her in the next 2 or 3 days. But you'd think, would items of clothing come off? What about a hat? Would that get snagged somewhere, But it could be a little bit of a needle in the haystack type thing. But yeah, the couple of things that had just caught my eye that just made me really, want to just make this live and talk about a couple of points were all the comments saying about her, that she'd be flailing around, yelling, screaming, people would know, or that, it wouldn't be a big deal to fall in that river. But I feel like, have you got experience diving into icy water? I have. It takes your breath away. And then if there's an undertow, and if you know, bad enough when you are, wearing protective cream, but you're just in a rashy, or what about if you're in, a wetsuit, right? It it takes your breath away. Imagine going into water, if going into water when you're in all these clothes, Wellington boots, denim jeans, woolen jumpers, a gilet over the top of a coat, both of them below the knee length. I mean, it's a recipe for drowning, and you're not flailing around. All her energy is going into trying to stay afloat, or the mechanism of drowning, and it's as simple as that. And the other thing was, a report is started somewhere, and there's just people repeating it, that Willow the Springer Spaniel was just running down the road. And no, Willow wasn't running down the road. And I do think that's important. I mean, this poor woman could have been abducted and Willow would still be at the bench, right? Willow would have been utterly confused. But and different, all dogs are different, but Springer Spaniels, I don't know, but kind of the type of dog you would hope would sort of give indication. I mean, my cattle dog isn't genetically predisposed to give indication, and it's something that he does. He's helped out with things a number of times. One time when I was desperate to find a cat, and I was looking everywhere, getting further and further away from home, desperate, because I'd heard a cat fight the night before I could bring him in. And he had made it home, but he was hiding because he'd hurt his arm, and he was hiding just in a bush. I just couldn't see him in there, and Rocky pointed. He was just like, oh, yes, I'm screaming the name, calling out. He's going, oh, yeah, there. It was like, thank you. And he just looked at me and smiled, and there my little poor one was with this burning hot swollen arm. And you want a Springer Spaniel sort of do that well. The Springer Spaniel was at the bench. Some reports say was roaming between the gate to the A5 off one of the lanes and the bench. Yeah, so, this whole idea of the routine of things is a big concern, because people in the caravan park, transient people that maybe have no connection to town and might be expected just to come and go. And so it does make me hope that, this is part of a really deep investigation for the police, and that's it's more of a holiday thing, though, I think, Blind Squirrel, rather than sort of like a trailer park, if you know what I mean. It's more like what you might consider to be an RV park or something. That's what I reckon. Similar to the one just down the road from where Suzanne Morphew went missing, where investigation was not done quickly and thoroughly enough, where RVs were leaving all the time after she went missing, and could have spirited her away up the highway. Anywho, yeah, I just find that deeply concerning, because even someone that had been there a few days, or maybe since Christmas, would have seen Nikki there often. And okay, sure, she might have seen him a little bit older than people that you think of as being abducted. That's baloney. And we can think of plenty of people that have been abducted and murdered whilst they're running and just going about their lives in a way that they should expect to do so safely. And Nikki's a very attractive woman and possibly is a friendly person that maybe someone had been having casual conversations with and taking her off her guard so that maybe when they approached. It's just weird though, right? What do you think about the phone being on mute? Is it just because she didn't want to have people on the other end of the conference call getting distracted by noises of the river and her swooshing boots through the grass? I mean, I'd probably put it on mute too and just listen unless I was talking. And in fact, that's often the etiquette for Zoom calls. I think she was on some Microsoft Suite Zoom conference call, but that would be the etiquette. Unless you're the one speaking, mute your microphone. So maybe it was just that, or is that something really weird? Or did she mute it because someone was talking to her and she didn't want people to hear whilst she just said, oh, excuse me, I'm on a call, or whilst they feigned something, a ruse, right? So it was on mute and the camera was off, because I guess too, when you're just, there to have a conference call, but you're using certain technology, all you need to be doing is speaking with each other. You don't need to be looking. Maybe it was a check-in meeting. I don't know what sort of meeting it was. It could have just been some sort of reporting on the week, or I don't know, right? But it's just, yeah, it's spooky because it's kind of like a ghost ship thing, isn't it? Where, police mount a yacht that's sort of adrift and, a pot of water's boiled dry on the stove and the table's set for tea, sort of thing. It's kind of got that vibe. But, that does concern me because of the nature of the area where there's a large population of people that don't live there full time. They're not permanent residents. It's transient, and lots of opportunity to hide someone, right? In a van, in a vehicle, in a motor vehicle, and just to drive off. But it's almost like something has just grabbed her attention instantly. She's, just because the way things are just placed down, it's like she was sitting on the bench and something's just taken her attention. Yeah, and she's missing without a trace, vanished into thin air, as Ellen is saying. And just beware, you guys, of what is going to happen to, sorry, not Ellen, but Ansel, Paul Ansel. I mean, look, okay, yeah, sure, he could have set something up, but he's going to be getting the rough treatment from every Tom, Dick, Witch, and Harry. It's already started, and people just seem to have no empathy or no imagination, or rather they've got the wrong type of imagination, and they like to imagine everything other than, the possibility that someone is just, oh yeah, they're not bawling their eyes out, they're not doing this or that, because they are, they're resilient. They are drawing on some deep well of resilience, or they've just gone into some sort of autopilot mode. It doesn't, because they can't allow themselves to accept anything of tragedy. It's just not an option, right? Do people not understand hope? So, I just wonder sometimes. I really grieve for a human emotion seems to just be dissipating. Just having a look at my little quickly jotted notes just to see if there was anything that I missed, but I think that was really it. That it frustrated me that they thought that if she went in the river, she would have been heard, she would have been flailing around and screaming out and splashing about, and they just can't believe that it wouldn't have happened. It's, the police seemed to they were really convinced that that was the most likely scenario, and were saying that they don't believe that she's left the area, but I wonder how they're going to feel hour by hour now. I really think it could change on a dime. People are making a lot out of the fact that Louise Cunningham, Nikki's sister, she's moved in with Paul Ansell and the daughters, so just you wait. Oh, yeah, they're in cahoots or something, right? Or she's in there because she's bugged because she wants to, she's bugged so that she can catch Paul out. Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, what is it about people? I mean, I think that is the most perfectly natural thing for a family member to do, for a sister to do, is to move in and be there for your nieces. Be there, I just don't. I can't respect. It's not that there's not the possibility that something foul and coming from their family unit has happened, but why jump to those conclusions just based on what we know? We don't know enough. Suicide is an option, sure. Suicide is always something that should be considered, and people will devise all sorts of ways to do this. And you've got to, just think of Debbie Collier, another person who was abused in her darkest hour by, again, people like the deranged witch of the South. And that's a possibility. I hope not, because to leave two daughters behind like that and just that eternal not knowing, I mean, that is just such a brutal thing to do. But of course, that's not the mindset of someone who is in that state, okay? They're not thinking from the point of view of a rational person, and the love feels different, to me, that would be down really low on the list. Someone with a grudge. I think if this was something, look, I think, if abduction is a possibility, or, what's happened, I think actually a grudge is a major possibility to consider. And as I was saying before about her victimology, her routine and everything, they knew how long they had, and they knew where they'd find her, and they knew the window, right? And there's lots of entry and exit points, and there's lots of mystery they can create around it. And why am I saying grudge? Financially, times for people would have been they've been very desperate over the last 3 years, right? Because of the major world event. And are people losing their homes or not able to get into a home? Was Nikki unable to broker a deal for someone that was desperate? Did something fall through? Has a business deal screwed someone up? Do they blame Nikki for for a final straw that broke the camel's back, you know, because what do we know yet about, you know, her business and how well she operated? It seems like she was pretty successful and had recently successfully broken a mortgage for one of her friends. I think it was the friend that she was texting about a play date for one of her daughters. But who knows? Who knows who would get blamed for something like that, right? Would they feel like, well, they've lost everything, she should too, and to hell with her family? Or, I mean, I don't know. Is there, you know, because there's seemingly no evidence of foul play, but of course the location is set up so that, you know, even with a window of 10 minutes, it's actually a long time. But, you know, no screams were heard. I think screams would travel across the fields well enough. I don't quite know the layout, but from what I've seen, it looks like they, you know, sound might travel enough, but who to? Well, back to the caravan park, which is only 100 feet away, so it's someone that's really taken her by surprise before, you know, she can scream. But then to get her that 100 feet up, back up to the park and into a vehicle without being seen, that's taking her towards other people. Did they somehow get her to run? Did they create a ruse where, come, and she's had to run up, go up and see towards the gate? Would she not just run holding her phone? Maybe not. Maybe something, it's like something has, you know, been created, you know, there's such a sense of urgency. Something has happened with such a sense of urgency, maybe, you know, and to lure her up toward the gate where they could get her into a vehicle at the road. And is this why the dog might have been going back and forth from the road to the bench? But, you know, there's no sign of that. I mean, if I was struggling, you'd try to shake off a boot, drop your hat, drop your Fitbit, do something, would you? Or maybe the act of leaving the phone, like, I don't know. But there's been a lot of people traipsing through now as well, right? Just the same with Abby and Libby and their murder at Delphi. You know, the area has just kind of been decimated, but hopefully police were able to see. And it seems like they haven't found a sign of any struggle, of nothing. It really is poof, like that. And it's why the river seems the most likely. She was definitely there, at least at 8:48, because she was seen by Christine, who was wearing her red coat and walking her white dog, and she's on CCTV. That is a sighting. She did follow her normal routine and enter those fields. So there's sort of like what they call, I think, a top field, a bottom field. There's different gates and paths, and it all looks just wonderfully country, you know. Lovely place to go and roam, especially for dogs to stretch their legs and use all their senses. And she probably felt really safe there, because she'd been there, her family says, thousands of times, or 1,000 times, you know, over the years. You know, so what would draw her close to the water? I mean, if someone was malicious, they could say, hey, take a look at this. Just go and point a few feet away. It's a few feet down, you know, not far from the bench to the riverside. push her in. I mean, that is so malicious. But yeah, what happened? If anyone's still here that wants to say anything, let's see. What are you saying? And see what you think. So Sensei lives about 2 hours away. Where are you, Sensei? Are you sort of down like Liverpool area? Are you more inland? Are you north? You would have thought her hat would have come off, right? I mean, yeah, it's so weird. I mean, I can understand why people are thinking it's Gone Girl, but you'd have to really find out some motive for her wanting to do that. It'd have to be very strong because it's such an intense thing to do. 2 young girls. But, you know, people do in times of great stress and leave their children. So Sensei says the family took the dog back there and they said she was... That's what I was wondering. Can they take the dog back and see what it does? So they did. The family took the dog back there and they said she was a little reactive in the top field but didn't react by the river. So it's the top field, that lane starting with G, I can't remember the name of, and where there's no CCTV out to the A5, out A6 motorway. Sensei continues, the scary thing is that on her work page she posts regularly that it's her routine and the area is tagged and that Willow was there in the water a lot. Yeah, it was no secret. Hey JK, it was no secret that this was her routine. She posted a lot of photos of herself there. People would definitely know her routine. Blind Squirrel says, my thought is Nicola was possibly abducted by law enforcement. Okay. Joman says, gone down the water sounds most likely, but what happened is hard to know. Is this river close to the coast or a lake? No, it's kind of close to the coast, going out into Morecambe Bay, which is north of Blackpool, and it's not really wide or deep where she is. It gets much wider nearer the coast. The thing with tidal places like this is the muddy bottoms and how it really sucks you in, and you could have sludge feet deep, so many feet deep. Even if she just went in at the edge, sort of tumbled over and tried to stand up, and it is 18-20 inches right where the bank is, you've still got to fall down to the river. So let's say you're 2 feet down, fall into the water. The water might only be a foot deep, but then you've got a foot of sludge, sucky sludge, okay, in your Wellington boots, and the water's running, and you can't reach up, you can't grab anything. Now they may just not have found clothing items that are actually there. There's cases where, I was just reading something where, a comment, someone said, look, my 22-year-old nephew just got up in the middle of the night, left the house with a gun, and they called all the authorities out to try and help search and rescue everything, and they were doing, professional searches and couldn't find the nephew, and so the family organised their own search, and within 2 hours, they found his body. He had gone and committed suicide. Professional search teams miss things all the time. I mean, we only need to look at Texas EquiSearch. I mean, what do they really find? Sorry, but, you know, what's their track record actually like? Things are missed all the time, right? And you have to go over and over and over again. And I think the river system there, from what it looks like, it'd be easy for things to be held underwater or snagged somewhere hidden, and eventually make its way out to sea, honestly. So, I don't know. It's like quicksand. You know, that really thick, slimy mud. When you stand in it, just sucks you down. It's very hard to get out of. Yeah, it's awful. And that river would have that. Okay, this is what they're dealing with. All these physical things, right? Yeah, it is quite a large river. It's not at its, you know, most wild where she went missing at St. Michael's. So if you look up St. Michael's Fields, Lancashire, Joman, you'll see it. And where she lives is Inskip. Yeah, so, you know, she's driven up there after dropping her kids to school. Or driven up there from home, maybe to drop kids from school near there, one or the other, I can't remember now. Yeah. So friends of Nikki and Paul are saying that they've got security at their own home. So they've got security cameras at their own home. And, you know, this isn't coming from police, okay? So, you know, we know to take it just to file it away. But they're saying that he's alibied. Basically, he's at the home and he's working at home. He hasn't left. Now, of course, it doesn't stop people from hiring someone to, you know, disappear your wife. But plenty of friends of the couple are saying that no, look, you know, he's not a suspect because he didn't leave the house. Right, and this is a tidal river and everything, and it's you can go in quite a way. It's actually very dangerous. She's wearing Wellington boots that are filling up with water, these thick socks, thick coats, etc. But it, you know, it is odd then that, you know, a Wellington boot, a sock, or, yeah, you know, especially as Sensei Wackadoodle, love your name, says, you know, a hat. Her hat wasn't found. She's pictured in all the pictures where it's colder weather that I've seen of her. I mean, she's wearing these adorable woolly hats. So it's a real mystery. And this poor dog, it's like, oh dang it, if only our animals could talk, right? But Sensei was just saying the dog was actually going up toward the top of a field, you know, away from the bench and towards the gate. And, you know, hey, did she arrange to meet someone and did she not expect to get abducted? Did something not go according to plan? I mean, we don't know anything about her personal life at this stage. If it wasn't a ruse, maybe she's creating a ruse, and maybe there's someone that she regularly sees, and and she just hasn't come back this time. Has she sometimes left her dog and her phone there as alibi before? Maybe even just to go up to the caravan park, right, where she's got a caravan, because it would be easy to have liaison there. You'd think that people would eventually talk about the person that they see there at the same time as Nikki or something, but I don't know. People can be really sneaky when they have to be, and cautious and clever, I guess. And some people might not be really taking much notice, but I imagine that if you live in a caravan park, or, you know, you're paying a lot of attention to everything that's going on there, and you know a lot of what goes on there. But, you know, these are possibilities, the possibility of an affair and of that person not wanting it to end, or something happening, or the husband her partner finding out. I mean, I guess these are all possibilities. It's just, you know, if she was wearing her Fitbit, her blue Fitbit on her wrist that day, then, you know, it's just gossip, is it, that she'd switched off the data recording or whatever on the Tuesday. But, you know, if you are having an affair, you'd be very aware that you can't be having your phone showing you being in places that you shouldn't or can't explain, right? So having somewhere that you go routinely and can leave a phone sitting on a park bench, I mean, hoping no one steals it, but hey, your dog's there. People assuming that if the dog's there, you're there. I don't know. That's just, sure, that can happen, but is that what's happening? Yeah. To speculate like that, sure, things are a possibility, but what we end up doing, or what I'm doing, is, you know, it's casting aspersions on somebody's moral character or on their values. Not that, you know, that has to be people live their lives their own way, so it's not necessarily judgment, but it's writing a script for her that might be 100% not true and completely impossible. Yeah. And it's rather cruel if that's the case, but yeah. Anywho, so that's probably about it. Blind Squirrel says the waterway searched was over 9 miles or 14.5 kims long. That sounds about right then, Blind Squirrel. I was just sort of trying to work out the length of that river to the coast, and that sounds about right. It sounds like they have searched all the way out. So at the river mouth too, they'll have to go down and up the coast of the bay as well, because there will be, you know, the water going out to sea and then sweeping along parallel. Where things could be turning up anywhere if she went into the water. You know, and that, you know, of course, if that's all a ruse, someone might have just thrown something into the water. It just hasn't been found yet, and that could be a further ruse. It's just so weird. So, you know, of course, it'd be interesting and useful to know what the people on the other end of the conference call were saying, you know, have to say about the call when she actually last spoke to them during that call. Yeah, and hopefully everybody at the caravan park's been checked. Hopefully any cameras along the stretch of highway has been checked. Yeah. So where are your votes? So I think what did you say, Blind Squirrel? Blind Squirrel thinks abducted by, but quite specifically by law enforcement. Okay, Yeoman, yeah. Yeah, the phone just sitting there like that, it's as if something startled her or just completely interrupted her or just caught her attention, or it's just left there, purposefully. Yeah. So who else? What do you think's most likely, Showman? Do you have an opinion? What do you think, JK? Do you have an opinion? Do you know much about this one? I haven't. Yeah, I know RL is Ron Logan, Showman. Yeah. But I went ahead and made a video about that anyway, right? So, after I wrote that email to you. All right, well, I've run out of steam because I don't know much about this case. I've only watched a few news articles, and then I saw that, and that was very briefly after seeing that Peter Hyatt was talking about it. And I thought, well, if Peter Hyatt is talking about it, it's a mysterious case. And yeah. So I just thought the setting was interesting, the victimology is interesting. And I got annoyed over a couple of things, so that's basically the gist of it. So I've just been repeating myself, really. Yeah, so law enforcement, do you mean that it's happened in the past, sort of in that county or anything? There was someone else saying that, oh, look, my father went missing and, I had to really take up the investigation myself because law enforcement weren't doing enough. But, it would be easy to perceive that law enforcement aren't doing enough for your case, really, because nothing would ever be enough, right? If it's your family member that's gone missing, it would be come hell or high water if any of my family went missing. But do you think law enforcement, why Blind Squirrel? I'm just curious about that. Just because they've been adamant about her drowning, or it's just a generalized thing and nothing to do with this case specifically? Okay, if you think about the type of things that could distract her and draw her attention, sure. Someone from law enforcement, yeah, there's so many different ruses, but yeah, it does concern me. Number one, it is a tidal river. I do get what Sensei Wackadoodle is saying, that, where she was might not be so bad. I can just imagine the conditions, though. Just in my mind, with my life experience, I feel like that would be enough to be of deep concern. But yeah, I don't like that the caravan park is right there, or even that Nicole apparently owned a caravan that was kept there. I don't like the fact that it was so routine for her, but of course it was, what an appealing place to go. Easy for her, great way to start the day. She was carrying on, she works from home, she's carrying on, with work every time she's there. She's not losing any time, and it's just perfect for her dog. She probably felt really safe there. And but it does worry me about the gate, that one laneway that is the nearest laneway entry, and that's the one without CCTV, and it's right near, it's got access to the A5, A6 motorway system. That is really concerning. But you've got to have the why, and that's why the caravan park is of concern, of course, because the why is, well, it's just someone that just was looking for a victim, looking for someone, and she took the fancy. And there's no more motive than that, right? but it's still, it's still reasonably audacious because it's so open, and you wouldn't know that there aren't going to suddenly be, a group of people with several dogs right there coming down the field at you, or people just walking down from the caravan park. But if you've been watching someone for long enough, maybe, that at that time there's not usually many other people. They're already at work or whatever, Anyway, I'm rambling. But we need to have a lot of compassion for the family, for her partner. And when he says disappeared without a trace, and up and a puff of smoke and things like that, and just vanished. I mean, he is shocked. This is so surreal. It isn't understandable. You can't process. It is incomprehensible. You would be, and it is perfectly human and okay to just be in complete denial of anything other than just that raw basic fact. And then you don't want to let your children down, maybe, right? These young daughters that he's responsible for, and and that the sister is stepping up to help care for. Because you just, waiting for that moment when their lives are finitely, so with total certainty, their whole lives are shattered. It's kind of in limbo now, right? There's that, just that fantasy that she's going to be found and walking back and everything's going to be fine, and their family isn't fractured, their family's whole again. But he's right now in such shock and disbelief, and it's a possibility he's never going to touch her face, say good morning. He's never going to see her with her children. He's never going to say another word. She's never going to speak to him again. They're never going to hug. He's got every second of the rest of his life to move through without her, right? So, yeah, I don't know what people expect. They want the tears, and they want to be able to judge the tears and how real they are. And see, we're all experts now, right? We're all experts on the body language, the text, the Jupiter's delight, and the and what a baseline is, what we think is his baseline, and he's not saying her name, and it's dangerous, really. A tiny bit of knowledge is really a dangerous thing. Anywho, I'm going to close off now. I've been rambling on, warbling on for an hour and nearly 25 minutes. Thanks to everyone that's dropped in, to Crumb Curious, JK, Sensei Wackadoodle, Blind Squirrel, Yeoman. Thanks, and I will speak to you later. Maybe this is a case we'll talk more about, maybe not. Depends what happens, but yeah, just wanted to bring it to your attention. And you all have a good day or night too. Okay, see ya.